Hi, it's been a while. Anyways, in this video, I'll be going over how I render. A lot of you have been requesting this video, and so here we are. So this video is broken down to 5 main components: references, composition, sketch, base color, shading, and final touches. I have timestamps below if you want to skip to any part, so enjoy! References are crucial in drawing because they give you a clearer idea of what you want to create. By looking at multiple references together, you can gather various ideas and see different ways artists use composition. What I like to do is go on Pinterest and make little pin boards. This way, it helps me visualize what I want to do. Composition is essentially how you arrange elements in your artwork to guide the viewer's eye and highlight the main subject. Artists tend to use simple shapes such as triangles, circles, and squares to guide the overall flow of the art piece. Example of bad composition and good composition. On this art piece, I used a simple triangle to highlight the overall composition, and I used streamers around the body of the character to further highlight Madoka as the main subject. I don't really use any fancy brushes for sketching. I tend to use one of the default brushes from Ibis Paint, and that's it. The sketching phase is quite self-explanatory. You just have to make sure your lines are clear and, well, you don't really have to worry about making things really neat at this phase. Just don't forget to flip your canvas from time to time. It helps you catch mistakes early on. I like to take a break for an hour or two after sketching, and then when I come back to it, I'll be able to spot new mistakes that I couldn't perceive beforehand. Whenever I'm choosing base colors, I like to first decide whether I want a warm or a cool color palette. For this artwork, I've chosen to go with a cool color scheme. So I picked swatches from the cooler side of the color wheel, and I quickly add my base colors to my canvas using the lasso tool. I don't like to use pure whites or pure blacks as base colors because they tend to look bland on the canvas, especially when you shade them in. So typically what I want to do is I supplement them with a lighter purple, or for black, I replace it with the dark blue or purple. An example here is that I'm replacing Madoka's dress in placement for white, a light purple. Now I want you to observe these two circles. People usually like to use a multiply layer above the base color, and what they do is drag the color wheel to a light gray, and they shade it in, like this. But what I like to do instead of that is that I make a new layer above the base color, I swatch the base color, and then I shift the hue, and then I shift the saturation a bit down. What you'll observe here is the circle on the right looks way more vibrant than the other one. The other one looks a little murky and sad. Both methods are just as great for different settings and scenarios, but if we're going for a nice pop of color, we're gonna use the simple concept for the circle. I don't really like to use a multiply layer to shade. I think it takes out the liberty and control whenever I pick shades, so I just tend to use a normal layer on top. Before anything else, I like to separate my sketch layer and base colors on separate folders. That way it's way easier to work with. You have to first distinguish where your light source is coming from. This then acts as a guide to where you can put your shades. Now with all of that in mind, we can now start shading. So first here you'll see I'm swatching the base color, shifting the hue, and toning down the saturation just a bit. And then I like to roughly place my shadows on the hair using my lasso tool. Now this is where it starts to get complicated. I tend to use a lot of colors whenever I shade, but this can be broken down into 4 components. Our first component is the base color and the base shade. Those are the shades that we've set up for the general character. Now our second component is our accent colors. These are colors that are similar to the base color, but they vary in saturation. Our third component is the secondary shade color. This will help define darker areas of the shadow and help our artwork look a bit more three-dimensional. And finally, our last component acts as the line art. So what we want to do here now is add our secondary base shade. So what we're going to do is pick a darker shade than our primary shade color and plop it over the areas that are typically pretty dark. We can already observe the change after adding our secondary shade color. The hair suddenly has more depth and volume into it. It's quite funny how one shade could change the entire outlook of your art piece. Now we're adding our line art shade to the entire piece. And basically you just play around with the different shades and work them into the piece until you feel satisfied. For the skin, I like to stick to 2 shades at most. You don't really want to over-render the skin, so I like to keep it plain and simple. Shadows around the eye and a little blush. For clothing, I like to work from big to small details, so first off, I want to plop down the basic shadows where all the shadows are gonna go. They don't have to be really detailed, they just need to give me a general idea of where I'm shading and where I'm placing my shadows, and yeah. And again, we're using the same concept as we did with the hair. This is an example of how the colors will interact with one another. So I'm slowly working in my line art shade. I'm plopping it on the areas which are the darkest, around the armpit, and around the areas where light doesn't hit. And then I'm plopping on my secondary base shade and accent colors. And again, I just work them in constantly until I'm satisfied with the final result. I'd say clothes are one of the harder things to render. There's a bunch of folds and things that are quite unpredictable to many beginners, and it may seem jarring at first, but once you understand how to break things down into simple shapes, everything becomes easy. For the background, I decided to use a really light yellow to complement the purpley and pinkish hues from Madoka. This is just a common concept in color theory. I would love to explain more, but this video is starting to get a little long, so if you guys want dedicated videos for specific topics, please do comment down below. I'll probably make more tutorial videos dedicated to specific topics in the future, but for now, this will do. This is honestly my favorite part to any drawing process. What I like to do is that I first duplicate the artwork as a layer above the entire thing. And then what I like to do is go to the Filters tab and click on Posterize. I like to mess around with the scroll bar and see whatever sticks and looks good. And then after that, I like to take the posterized layer and lower the opacity. At this stage, I'm just playing around with opacity layers, overlays, add effects, all of that. You can see me jostling around different effects and switching and deleting them. It's all about being experimental and just seeing what sticks. But in the end, I ended up sticking with a simple highlight and chromatic aberration and a noise filter. Before and after. Thank you guys so much for sticking around till the last part of the video. That is, if you're still watching this. I tried my best to fit as much information as I can into one little video. Emphasis on try. There were a lot of things I really wanted to fit into this video, but if I did, this video would be hours long. I'm actually wondering how many of you watched till the end. Anyways, thank you so much for the fan art, and keep at 'em. I love them so much. And yeah, bye.